Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Terrence, giving you the proper greeting of the day as it relates to you. Yes, so today I was asking around what would be a good topic to talk about, and there was a request for why does it seem like everything is so disconnected nowadays? And uh, for whatever reason, the timeline of 2020 was called out as far as people being nice to each other. But what I did is I'm going to take that nice topic and turn it into heartless, right? So the topic obviously, as you know now, is disconnected and heartless, right? So the first thing that comes to mind when I hear that um, are phrases like beauty is in the eye of the beholder or perception is reality, right? Well, what do these phrases actually mean, right? So what you primarily think and how you think about those thoughts dictates what you perceive as beautiful, the reality, disconnected, or heartless, right? So let's break that down a little bit further, right? And let's think about that thing. The act of observing, right, with judgment gives the perception of how reality is visualized, what we internalize as far as what we see, right? That internalized observation is coming from the external world. So when we take that external world and we're viewing it um, through our observation, and then the things that we've went through, i.e., the experiences that we've gone through, right? Help build a picture for what we're internalizing from what we see. Okay. Now that's from a mind space, and observation isn't enough, right? Um, Observation without judgment, well, now you're really moving with your heart. And the heart is a place where there aren't any moral or ethical values that are associated with that observation. So when you really think about it, like that's a dangerous world to live in, right? Imagine living in a world with no morals or no ethical standards. Like, not the prettiest of places, right? Um, so let's really start to unpack these things and how everything ties together. Okay. So our mind being that conscious faculty, right, is predicated causing a judgment. Our mind observing the world causes the judgment of everything being separated. Our mind observing other people causes that judgment um, of the heartless, right? So the act of judging again isn't enough, right? The act of observation isn't enough, right? The heart needs to be intertwined with it. Okay. And the reason why I say the heart needs to be intertwined is with our mind being our protective mechanism, with the brain being our survival instinct, where the natural fight or flight, so on and so forth, right? Where instinct kicks in when it needs to, that judgment faculty is absolutely needed. That prefrontal cortex is needed to siphon through, right, what we're siphoning through. However, when we're in a place and we're observing something and we pick up on certain cues or we pick up on certain things and they impact us internally, well, that speaks to the being, that speaks to the state of mind that somebody's in, right? That speaks to where you are in your perception to reality. If the laws that govern that perception weren't already within self, then that observation or that perception couldn't be brought to light, right? So that thing must already be in us. That disconnect must already be in us. That heartlessness or being nice must already be in us for us to observe it within somebody else, right? Let's really think about that. Have you ever seen something or observed something or felt something that you've never felt before? Right? Think about that for a minute. Have you ever seen something, observed something, or felt something that you've never felt before? Okay. Now, that perception isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. As a matter of fact, it all it speaks to really is that you have experience, right? You have experience. And from those experiences, the primary thought that you have with the belief that's associated to that thought dictates how you perceive these certain situations. So in this instance, um, I think it'd be necessary to really think about, why am I perceiving a disconnect? Why am I perceiving heartlessness? Right. And typically, 9 times out of 10, what we're likely to identify is identify with that thing that's external to who we are as an individual, right? To who we are internally. And as long as we continue to look at that thing externally, right, we can never really identify why we feel the way we feel internally. So the internal focal point is absolutely necessary, right? The internal focal point is absolutely important when we're talking about the perception that we see in this world, especially if it's a negative light. Now, my recommendation is, if even if it's positive or negative or neutral, right, it's necessary to go in and unpack why we feel the way we feel about that certain thing, why we feel there is a disconnect, why we feel there is a heartlessness, right? So a balance between the mind and the heart um keeps us in a safe place, right? And it keeps us in a safe place because, again, when we're just observing without judgment, then we're observing with our heart, which leaves us vulnerable. And it leaves us vulnerable because we're not associating that uh primal instinct to survive. But when we keep an even keel balance between the two, then not only are we observing with our heart, but we're also allowing our brain um, to do what it's been doing for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And that's humans still being here, survival, right? So give me 1 second. I wrote a little note here. Do. All right. So the heart balance with the mind is a beautiful thing, counterbalancing vulnerability with openness and protection, taking the worst of any situation and being the light to show the way is you. That seed is planted. Whether it takes root in fertile soil, on concrete, or in a thorny bush, the choice is ultimately yours, right? How will your light shine upon the world, strengthening the connection and build upon the heart, so that those that don't see begin to see? Let me see. Let's see your light. All right. Well, I love y'all. Have a great morning, a great afternoon, and a great evening. And we'll catch up later. Adios.